Jonathan, you'll know no peace until you go and meet her.
Please, I will go. Don't kill me. Sister Rose, please open this door. Please, I don't want to end like this. I know you're in there hearing. I beg you. Oh my God! He's close, Sis Rose! God! This dream again! Oh my God! He started sobbing.
She stood at the door, trembling. The man on the other side of it had destroyed her life. He had stolen something she could never get back. He had crept into her story like a thief in the night and left her in pieces so small she spent years wondering if God himself had forgotten her. And now, here he was, on her doorstep, with tears she never thought those eyes could produce. Her husband's hand found the small of her back, steady, warm, grounding, and she heard his voice, low and certain. Remember why we started this fast. She closed her eyes. Fresh tears poured out freely. And in that silence, she made the hardest decision of her entire life. There is always a particular person that every church seems to have. The one who arrives early and leaves late. The one whose voice carries the worship into another dimension. The one the younger girls watch and quietly say to themselves, when I grow up, I want to be like her. In Living Waters Christian Assembly, that woman was Sister Rose Aloba. Rose was 26 years old, curvy, graceful, with a smile that made strangers feel like they had known her for years. The firstborn of a quiet civil servant father and a mother who prayed over her in the womb and never stopped. She had grown up in the church. Her mother was in the women's ministry. Her father led the ushers. And faith was not just a Sunday habit for Rose. It was the air she breathed. She was the lead soprano singer in the choir, the one who could take a simple hymn and make grown men weep in awe of God or genuine repentance. She led Sunday school for the children. She visited the sick. She fasted every first week of the month. When people needed counsel, they came to Rose. When the choir needed someone to fill in for the worship director, they called Rose. She had grown up in the pew, literally. Her earliest memories were falling asleep against her mother's shoulder during long Sunday evening services. She had grown up to know church as her second home. By the time Rose was a teenager, her voice had already become a conversation. People talked about it the way they talked about something that couldn't quite be explained in ordinary language. She wasn't just singing, she was ministering. She was a blessing to the church. Many healings and deliverances had happened under her song ministration countless times. There was a grief in her worship, a longing, a surrender that made even the most distracted heart go still. She joined the choir at 16, and by 22, she was the lead soloist. She didn't pursue the position, it pursued her. But Rose was more than her voice.
She was the kind of Christian who showed up early and stayed late. She was the one cleaning the church kitchen when everyone else had gone home. She was the one visiting Sister Agnes in the hospital, bringing homemade stew and reading psalms until the old woman fell asleep. She led the ladies' discipleship class every Thursday evening with the kind of quiet authority that only comes from genuine time spent on one's knees. And in all these, she's doing so well in her studies. She was deeply and genuinely loved. Her best friend Caleb, yes, a man, because some friendships transcend category, had known her since they were teenagers in the youth fellowship. Caleb was like a brother, protective, funny, spiritual in that quiet, steady way. They were assigned together to mentor new members. They prayed together. They debated scripture together. They were the kind of friends people assumed would eventually get married, but never did, because some bonds are too sacred to complicate. Rose's life from the outside looked like a testimony waiting to be given. But testimonies, as any church person knows, are not born in comfort. They are born in fire. The young women in the church looked at her and whispered the way young women whisper about someone they genuinely admire. That's who I want to be. Even the elders nodded when her name was mentioned. Sister Rose, that one has a real walk with God. Nobody matches up. She wasn't perfect. She would be the first to tell you that. She had seasons where prayer felt like shouting into a ceiling, where her Bible felt like just a book, where doubt crept in through the cracks of a difficult week. But she always came back. She always found her way back to her knees, and that was what made her different. Her consistency in pursuit of God regardless. That was the thing about Rose. She didn't give up on God, even when she felt like God had gone quiet. This and more was who Sister Rose was before the storm came and tried to take everything from her. His name was Jonathan. He arrived on a Tuesday evening, the midweek service, wearing a pressed shirt and a humble expression. He was new to the city, he said, looking for a church home. Someone had recommended Living Waters. Within weeks, he was a fixture. He came early, he stayed late, he helped stack chairs, he sat in the front row during sermons and wrote notes. He joined the men's fellowship. He was respectful to the elders. He was warm to the young people. And then, in the third month, something that made the entire congregation stand and clap, Jonathan gave his life to Christ. The pastor laid hands on him. The choir sang. People hugged him like he was a prodigal son returning home. Rose was genuinely moved. She believed in second chances. She always had. So when the pastor asked her and Caleb to mentor Jonathan, to walk with him, pray with him, help him grow in his new faith, she said yes without hesitation. She had no reason to say anything else. She did not know what she was letting into her life, even though she sensed something wasn't right, but she can't place it. And why would she find fault in someone Jesus had already redeemed? It was a Wednesday in December. Rose and Caleb arrived together at Jonathan's flat as they always did. They greeted him, sat and opened the Bible. Jonathan had made a list of questions, specific, thoughtful. They went through them one by one. About 40 minutes in, Caleb's phone rang. It was Brother Segun from the next street. There was a problem. A young man in crisis. Could Caleb come quickly? Caleb frowned at the phone, looked at Rose, then at Jonathan. I'll go and come back in 15 minutes, he said. I'll be quick. Rose nodded easily. We'll be here. Caleb left. Jonathan's entire posture changed the moment the door closed. What happened next shattered Sister Rose's life forever. He grabbed her. The look in his eyes said it all. Rose fought. She wept. She begged in the name of the God she had served her whole life. Jonathan did not stop. Out on the street, Caleb had barely gone halfway when his spirit nudged him to go back. Not an audible voice, a strong sensation deep in his gut, like a hand pressing urgently on his chest. Go back now. He paused on the pavement. He looked toward Jonathan's building. And then, because he told himself he was being irrational, because he was almost there, because it was just 15 minutes, he kept walking. Probably going back would have saved our dear Sister Rose. That 15 minutes cost her everything. Jonathan overpowered her and took her dignity as a woman. Jonathan had actually planned it. He had been patient, methodical, and deliberate. He had waited for precisely this opportunity. He had manufactured the question list. He had arranged the timing. The call Caleb received had not been accidental at all. It was part of his plan. Here is the ugly truth about Jonathan that nobody in that church knew. Before he set foot in Living Waters, he had made a bet. It started, as many terrible things do, with careless words. There was another choir member, a young man named Bayo, who had been boasting about Rose. Not inappropriately, just enthusiastically. The way you boast about something genuinely extraordinary. Sister Rose is different, Bayo had said one evening, laughing. That woman is serious. She's not like these church girls that live recklessly and cover up with church to do sneaky things. She's real, a real woman of God. Jonathan had smiled slowly. You think so? Jonathan, who was not yet a member, who was in fact someone Bayo knew from outside the church, had smirked. Nobody is that holy, Jonathan said. Give me 3 months inside that church and I'll prove it. Bayo laughed. He didn't take it seriously. He should have. because Jonathan was a man who had built his identity on the conquest of women he considered out of reach. Church women in his world were the ultimate challenge, and Sister Rose, respected, admired, untouchable, was the ultimate prize. And what seems like a casual conversation turned to negotiation. Jonathan said he could have her. Bayo, in a moment of gross insensitivity, knowing how cunning he was, said he couldn't. A bet was placed. An amount of money was agreed upon. Not with ill intent, or so he told himself. He had spoken about her the way people sometimes speak carelessly about things they admire, not understanding that some ears receive even admiration as a challenge. He thought Jonathan was bluffing, but he wasn't. Later, when Bayo understood what had actually happened, when Jonathan came to collect his win, grinning, Bayo was sick with regret. He gave the money and refused to speak to Jonathan again. He buried the secret in the deepest part of himself and tried to act as if it had never happened. But secrets, beloved, are not dead things. They breathe, they wait. If grief had a sound, it would have sounded like Rose on the night Jonathan had his way with her. She managed to get home without anyone noticing her. She didn't scream, she didn't call anyone. She sat on her bed for an hour and a half and stared at her face in the mirror as if they belonged to someone else. At some point, she couldn't even face herself in the mirror again, but broke down. "This is too much for me," she cried unaudibly. Inside her flat, she bathed 3 times as if it could erase what had happened. At some point, she sat in the bathtub with the water running. She scrubbed her skin until it was raw, and then she sat in the dark corner of her bedroom and asked God a question she had never asked before. Where were you? She cried until there were no more sounds, only the shaking. She didn't tell anyone. How do you say it? To whom do you say it? She had spent her whole life being the strong one, the pure one, the one people pointed to as an example. And now, this. She felt that the word shame was too small a container for what she was carrying, but it was the word that kept rising, kept settling on her like ash. She asked God to forgive her. She stopped singing in the choir. The Sunday after, she sat in the congregation for the first time in years. Her choir director, Brother Femi, came to check on her. She said she wasn't feeling well. He believed her and prayed over her. She stopped attending Thursday discipleship class too. She stopped returning calls promptly. She stopped arriving early and staying late. She moved through church like a ghost, present enough that no one raised an alarm, absent enough that life had gone out of her completely. Brother Caleb noticed. He didn't know what had happened, but he noticed the change. He also noticed that Jonathan had stopped coming to church. No calls returned, no response at the gate when Caleb visited twice. Jonathan had disappeared from the church entirely. His sudden absence after such a dramatic conversion baffled the congregation. The pastor asked around. Nobody had answers. Bayo knew, and it ate him alive. He watched Rose slowly fade week by week, and he understood exactly what Jonathan had done. He had won the bet. He had gotten what he came for, and now he is gone. Bayo couldn't look at Rose without feeling sick with guilt. He had praised her so extravagantly. He had made her sound like a challenge. He had, without meaning to, painted a target on her back. He never told anyone, and that shame followed him for years. Rose, meanwhile, told no one too. Not her mother, not Caleb, not the pastor. She blamed herself in ways that made no logical sense but felt completely real. She told herself she should have left when Caleb left. She should have known. She should have seen it. She believed God was disappointed in her. She believed she was ruined. What no one noticed was that Jonathan had never truly left the story. 4 weeks after that night, Rose missed her cycle. She bought a test at a pharmacy 3 streets away where no one would recognize her. Rose stared at a line on a test strip, the kind of line that under any other circumstances in a married woman's life would have produced tears of joy. She sat in a public restroom and stared at the result until the lines blurred. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth and did not make a sound. Why does it have to get to this, God? Her throat tightened as the tears she had been fighting back flowed freely. In the weeks that followed, something strange began happening. People who had no idea what she was carrying, physically or emotionally,
kept coming to her with the same message. An older woman in the church held Rose's hand one Sunday and said, unprompted, "Rose, I don't know why I'm saying this, but God told me to tell you, do not destroy any seed He gives you in this season. Do not destroy what He has placed in you. He has a purpose for it." Rose stared at her
and couldn't believe what she's hearing. 3 days later, a different person, same message, different words. And then, alone in her room late one night, during a moment of desperate prayer, Rose felt something, not audible, but real, like a whisper pressed directly into her spirit. Don't. She pressed her hands over her ears. She didn't want to hear it. She couldn't hear it, because what that word was asking of her was impossible. To carry this pregnancy, the result of violence, of betrayal, of the worst night of her life, and show it to the world, to her mother, to Caleb, to everyone who saw her as their role model in church, their untouchable Sister Rose, she couldn't do it. In the weeks that followed, God raised more people around her to tell her same thing. A pastor on the radio whose sermon one afternoon stopped her cold in her kitchen with words about obeying the voice of God even when it costs you. A woman at the market who looked at Rose and said, out of nowhere, "That which God is asking you to keep it. You will understand later." Rose dismissed them all. She explained them all away. She had lost so much already. Her peace, her joy, sense of herself. And now, this. It felt like the final confirmation of everything shame had been whispering since that night. It felt like punishment wearing the face of consequence. She cried out, and for the first time in her life, she was not sure if she was praying or simply screaming into the air. In the stillness that followed her weeping, she felt something settle around her. Not an audible voice, not a vision, but a knowing, the kind that doesn't come from the mind, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere that thinking cannot reach. This is not punishment. I have not abandoned you. Even from this, I can bring life. She had in the cavern of her own spirit something about Solomon, about how the most celebrated king in Israel's history was born from a union that began in sin, David and Bathsheba, a story of betrayal and grief that God somehow, impossibly, chose to weave into the line of kings. Solomon was the child born after all of that, and God loved him. Even from this, I can bring life. She had it again, and she chose not to believe it. She told herself it was wishful thinking. She told herself God would not tell her to keep a pregnancy that came from violence. She told herself she could not look at that child every day and live happy. She told herself too many things. And then, she made a decision she would carry for the next 11 years of her life. Want to find out? Subscribe and turn on your notification bell for it. Thanks for watching.